Sorry for the delay. A little bit of a slower week for us. I should actually say the opposite. Crazy week for us. That's why we did not have as many episodes of the Call Up over the last week and a half, but we are back. I'm Aram, he's Jack, and we've got a good one, right? We got the Chicago Cubs top prospects here. Again, sorry for the last week and a half, only giving you one episode. We're going to give you two this week, and two fun ones because we're going two farm system breakdowns. Today, Chicago Cubs, one of the better systems in baseball. And then tomorrow, we're going Cincinnati Reds, which not one of the best systems in baseball, but still some fun players in there that I'm excited to talk about. And that'll wrap up the NL Central already. We've got some good tempo to what we're doing right now.
We do, except when we take, 9 days between episodes. And hey, where have you guys been? The answer is napping and playing video games. And that's kind of it. We're doing literally nothing else. So we just opted out of delivering an episode. I'm sorry for that, but we're back now.
Yeah. Dude, people are going to believe that.
No. So we were at Jeff Conine's Celebrity All-Star Golf Classic, which was awesome. Phenomenal down in South Florida. And then I had some stuff pop up. You had some stuff pop up. Sometimes it's tough to sit down at noon and it's like you got an hour and a half, and we haven't had that until Thursday, but we're knocking it out now.
Yeah, that's the thing is when it's when we're bouncing around. The farm system breakdowns are the hardest episodes to take because they're so long, but they're so much fun. And with this Cubs system, and also the bouncing around thing, could have some more details on that in the future. But the Cubs farm system, man, like this is on the top end. I mean, one of the best systems in baseball. I think where for me it maybe slides a little behind some of the other farm systems is. I do think that there is a drop off at the 8-9 range, and we'll get into that. There's still good prospects after that. But if we're talking about, tier one, the top systems in baseball, I think the star power in the top 5, 6, 7 is up there with any in Major League Baseball. But I do think that there's some systems that maybe would just get the edge because I like their 8 through 15 a little bit more. That said, the Cubs have a lot of talent, and I think what really solidifies this system is the fact that a lot of that talent is in the upper levels.
Yeah.
It's not just speculative, right? Like, it's not just, oh, this guy had a sick DSL season.
Right.
And, we're going to talk about Alfredo Duno with the Reds. Really talented, really exciting, but it's even more speculative than these other prospects that we're going to be talking about in the Cubs system. So that's the other side of it that I think is interesting. A lot of guys that have had success in high A, even double A, and you're kind of trying to figure out where they fit in at the big league level. That's a great problem to have and usually a sign of a good farm system.
Well, we're already where we think that the Brewers farm system is better than the Cubs farm system. I see a lot of these farm system rankings, and I see the Cubs ahead of the Brewers, and I see the Cubs ahead of some other organizations that I feel like are deeper. But, I look at the Cubs and the Brewers side by side. And the top 5 in the Cubs system are, I think closer is a huge deal there. Not only closer to the big leagues, but more people know that they have immense value versus the top 5 in the Brewers system. You've got a kid that had an 1100 OPS in the DSL, and then you've got, a catcher that missed the entire year and had surgery. So it's like, I feel like the top 5, it's almost a clearer picture that's taken of the Cubs top 5, and that's what pushes them ahead. And I'm totally with you, man. We've seen a lot of good farm systems really build from low A. And when you stockpile in low A, high A, you're not going to get the respect of other farm systems that are stockpiling in double A, triple A because it's there. It's more clear. More people are watching triple A games, double A games than they are checking in on Clearwater and seeing Kaba and Taiit play.
I will say, if there's any exception to that, it's probably Cubs fans. They're probably watching.
Right.
They're probably watching.
They love Myrtle Beach.
They're definitely tapped in South Bend. The last thing I'll mention before we jump right into it, and again, as always, link is in the episode description to follow along with the write-ups, and we'll be sharing it on our screen, is, and I'm not saying this to rub this in. I'm actually saying this as a reason why you should be bullish on where the Cubs are at from a drafting and development perspective. Imagine this farm system with Zaire Hope, with Michael Busch, or not with Michael Busch, excuse me. Michael Busch is a good player to have. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done it. With Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope in that fold as well, Cam Smith in that fold as well. Again, I'm not saying it as they shouldn't do it. They have Kyle freaking Tucker, and Michael Busch could become, one of the better first basemen in baseball with the glove and the power and the ability to walk that he has. My point is, that's the kind of scouting that they have been able to put together here and the success that they've had. And with all of your frustration that you may have as a Cubs fan with them not spending, at least they have this method of being able to accumulate talent at the big league level. I think you can feel very confident that they are going to scout and develop pretty well. And I think we're seeing that. And they're converting that into big league talent now with Bush and Tucker.
Do you know how many other rosters in Major League Baseball would be rostering Owen Caissie and Moises Ballesteros surefire on opening day?
Yes.
And we are in the situation on the north side of Chicago where those guys might be pinched out and they're going to Iowa when they shouldn't be in Iowa anymore. Matt Shaw is going to be the opening day third baseman. I feel pretty strongly about that, although they signed Birdie as a time buyer if they need it. I think Birdie's going to be a bench utility guy and Shaw is going to be the everyday third baseman. But I deem it more likely than not that both Caissie and Ballesteros are hanging out in AAA and they're waiting for either someone to get hurt or someone to get traded. And it's a good problem to be in, man. That's a good situation.
Kevin Alcantara would be getting run for a lot of teams
exactly.
throughout the year. So they're in a great spot. But let's jump right into it. You talked about bench utility. We're going names to watch here, and starts with just that.
Rule 5, baby. Tired, John Birdie, wired, Gage Workman, Rule 5 pick out of Detroit. Gage is a guy that I got to know decently well in 2018 when he was out on the Cape. He was one of the youngest players on Cape Cod at that point. He went to Arizona State a year earlier than most, but I was blown away by his maturity. I was watching his minor league career closely, and it wasn't really getting off the ground until 2024. His age 24 season, he was awesome. Previous best OPS by, 80 points. He was great. Drove in 89, hit 18 bombs. And he hit 280, man. I think this guy is going to survive as a tall, big-bodied shortstop third base type.
100%. And I got to see him in on the Cape as well. He was there, Brewster, again the year after that. And it's funny, when I was still potentially considering going down the broadcasting route, that's why Workman's name always sticks in my mind, because I put together one reel.
Yeah.
And I mean, your worst calls are better than my best calls when I was doing this thing.
I don't know.
But I sent that over to you. And I think I was to the day I die, the most proud I'll ever be is of a Gage Workman play to his left where he spins and throws. And I was like, wow,
you were on it.
I was smooth. I was on it. But to that point, I was so wowed back then at a guy as tall as he is and long as he is, the way that he moves his feet, and he can play all over the diamond, man. Like, he is an athlete for how big he is. The question is a swing and miss, but he did everything you wanted to see offensively. And we talked a lot more about him in the Rule 5. If you're a Cubs fan who just found us, go check out the Rule 5 recap episode. And we got really deep into the offensive shift from a Gage Workman this past year.
Yep. Dernish Valdez is another guy, shortstop of the complex, and yet another outdated height and weight. He's listed at 5'11", 150. He's not 5'11", 150. He's got a 488 career slug. He was a big ticket free agent guy, just under $3 million in the 23 IFA class. He can grow into power. He's already growing into power. He's not 150 pounds. The question is going to be, what you think, hit tool overall?
Yes. Yeah. Hit tool and approach. But he's got power, dude. Like, he hasn't played a ton of games. You and I were talking about this. He was placed on the restricted list twice, and the restricted list has restricted as a negative connotation. What was the word that you told me that also gets used instead of restricted list?
The softer landing is temporary and active.
I think that's better, because restricted makes it sound like something you did something wrong.
Like, it sounds like you're suspended, although we have the suspended list.
Exactly. This is an 18-year-old. Like, it could have been a family thing. It could have been,
right.
There's a million different things it could have been,
right.
But whatever it was, he only played 18 games. So in that respect, we didn't get to see a ton in 2024, but when he was on the field, he popped to 110 already. We're talking about an 18-year-old that's wiry, and it's not like he's big. He's bigger than 150, but he ain't 200. And he's already popping 110s. I think he had multiple. The power of the bat speed is crazy. The chase is high. The swing and miss is a little bit there for sure, but this is a guy that could be, I think, a power hitting, ultimately probably second base or third base, but there's definitely a lot to like there offensively, which is why he got that big payday.
Yep. Pedro Ramirez is the next guy. He's hit, man. He's hitting a career 296 with a 791 OPS. He's played 323 minor league games. So I'm into it. He really doesn't punch out. He was a low ticket IFA guy in 2021. He's going to be 21 years old. He is high floor, low ceiling when it comes to guys that were IFA signings that are making their way through the lower levels.
Yeah, I think people were always waiting for that breakout, and this is the conversation that you and I have had where it's like advanced players at lower levels. Sometimes we assume that the arrow is going to continue to be diagonally upwards, right? And they're just going to keep getting better and better and better. Sometimes they're just ahead of their years, but they're close to where their ceiling is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what Pedro Ramirez is. That said, that's a great get for $75,000. The field of hits above average, the switch hitter. And I think knowing that he might be a little bit capped in terms of the power, though he hits the ball hard enough to project in the big leagues, they started moving him around the diamond a little bit more. He put a little left at the end of the year in South Bend. He's played third, second. So I could see that switch hitting utility type.
Brody McCullough is a weird one, man. He threw a lot of innings, and he was really good at the D2 level at Wingate. He's low to mid-90s. I watched the delivery, and I don't love it, if we're being honest. It's very taxing, I think, and not very repeatable, but it's weird, and it's unorthodox. It almost seems like oh man, who was the kid? Not the kid, Karinchak. You know what I mean? It's like if Karinchak threw from the wind, that's kind of what Brody McCullough would look like. Although Karinchak is super over the top, and that's, among other things, how he got the vert. But McCullough like kind of drops down and does this weird, low slot, and it's okay. And the numbers have been decent. We'll see how he looks coming back from injury, but I question the repeatability of the mechanics. He should get an elongated look as a starter, though.
Yeah, I will say he can definitely spin it. It's a little jumpy, like you said, but he does work down decently well for a guy that's over the top. And he gets good vert on that fastball. I'm even just looking from 2024 before he went down, which is only 117 four seamers. He's getting 19 and 2, 19 vert, 2 inches of horizontal. So like that is riding, that is living at the top. So you should have a big league arm one way or another just because of that ability. And if you put him in shorter spurts, I absolutely could play, out of the bullpen. But I'm interested to see because, the Cubs have had some success with these guys that are, able to backspin it a little bit and, maybe haven't found that feel to throw the breaking ball to the same degree. But he has flashed that in the past. So I'm just interested. I don't know totally I would assume he's more of a pronator than a supinator
based on the arsenal. Yeah.
And that's typically what the Cubs have had success with, right? Are those supinators, I think. So I'm interested to just see what it looks like, but there's no doubt that he can absolutely spin the baseball, and get that vert.
Was Yahil Melendez 16?
He was close.
He was close. He was probably in the mid-teens, maybe high teens, like 16, 17, 18. 7th round pick in 2023. And he was really good this past year. Got on base at nearly a 400 clip at the complex. He K'd at the complex, but he also walked 14% of the time. And he's got a frame that you can dream on, dude. 19 years old, already 6'3". Like, assuming that fills out and he can add some muscle to that, that turns into power, which ups the 425 slug. And they may have a legit third base prospect here.
Yeah, he was quite close, to be honest. It's just one of those guys where it's like, man, I wish I could see more games and just get a little bit more of an idea of what the hit tool can ultimately look like, because four seamers, guy, and it's a pretty decent sample. It's just I want to see against like in low A competition, how is it going to look when you're not seeing 55% four seamers, which is what you really see like at the complex level for the most part.
Yeah.
Against four seamers, 390, 511, 622 slash line. Against everything else, not quite as good. It was 140, 227, 180. You're not sounding the alarms because he's young and projectable, but you are just wondering if that's going to be a theme and a problem. It's one of the bigger discrepancies I've seen in contact rates versus fastballs and secondaries. But again, it's just the complex. Some things can get cleaned up. And his ability to hammer fastballs and the EVs being what they are, clearly showing really thick lower half as well. Like he's got a lot going for him.
Yeah. A couple more names to watch. Drew Gray, first sentence, strikes. He has reliever stuff. Throw strikes.
Yep.
So in 118 minor league innings, he's walked 103.
I wanted to have him in the top 15. It's just, I can't when you have a 57% strike rate, which honestly, I thought it might have been worse than that when you look at the walk rates.
Right.
The whiff rates are crazy. The stuff is great from the left side. Just don't be Burl Caraway, please. And I think he's already throwing more strikes. But and we saw like his last start of the year, dude, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 9 Ks.
Yeah.
Like, it's in there.
That's there. And opponents hit under 200 all the time against him. Just, dude, don't beat yourself.
They also get on base at a 370 clip. So that's what it's all about. But yeah, it's hard to beat him unless you just let him beat himself.
Exactly. Ben Cowles, another guy, he came alongside Jack Neely in the Mark Leiter Jr. deal at the 24 deadline from the Yankees. He was legit, man. In AA Somerset, 850 OPS. He didn't play much in Tennessee, but then he went out to the Arizona Fall League. It was not that great. K rate is dropping, which is nice, and he's just kind of like that. Hey, we've got another utility guy that could hang out in Iowa and possibly get the call if need be.
Yeah, the Yankees seem to hate these guys, right? Caleb Durbin, send him out of there. But it is a found value as well, and it turns out to usually be a good complementary piece in some of those smaller trades. I think he's a high probability big leaguer, whether it's kind of a shuttle guy back and forth or a guy that can stick on the bench.
Yeah.
There's value to that. When you make good swing decisions, when the EVs are good enough and they are comfortably good enough and you can run and move around and play shortstop. And that's a big thing too. With these guys, I always talk about it. If you can actually play shortstop, not just play there in a pinch, I have a lot more value placed on you as that bench utility guy.
Yeah. Next guy's Fernando Cruz, maybe my shortest name to consider write-up ever. Signed for $4 million. It's huge, but, it was okay in the DSL, not great, and that's kind of it. That's all I have at Fernando Cruz.
Yeah, you can see the tools. You can see the projection. You can see why scouts liked him as an amateur, and he got a lot of money. But the results haven't totally been there yet. He's patient. He can hit the ball hard. Need to see him make more consistent contact, and secondaries kind of really chewed him up last year.
Yeah. A couple more guys. Angel Cepeda is another one. In the DSL 23, complex in 24, he's a 294 career hitter. He's a lot like Yahil Melendez, 24 extra base hits, 26 bags. And like one of those fun backstories as well, was in New Jersey, moved to the DR, signed during an IFA period in 2023. So you assume that he's going to go to an affiliate, probably Myrtle, and won't turn 20 until the season's over. He's hit to this point in the complexes.
There's another guy that's probably like 16, 17 range and right there with Melendez. Like it's just a really sound offensive profile thus far. He makes decent contact. He's patient, hits the ball hard enough, probably second base ultimately, but they've moved him around plenty too. And he's played some third, some short. They even threw him in the outfield a little bit here and there. I'm interested to see how it looks. He'll be 19 years old for the entirety of the season. I think this is a sneaky prospect in the system as well.
No doubt. And then last but not least, Pablo Aliendo. He lifts the ball, 25% ground ball rate in 2024. That's hard to believe. But he strikes out a lot. We'll see what happens here. 58 games this past year in AA. He had a 139 WRC plus. So he's a catching prospect to watch. Don't bank on him to be the catcher of the future. I'd say bank on Ballesteros shoring things up defensively before you say, well, we've got Aliendo too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing is he swings and misses too much, as you said. If he's a good receiver and blocker and the arm is good, for whatever reason, though, the transfer is slow and the pop times aren't as quick. And he struggled to limit the run game this past year. And the defensive side of things have to be really sound for me to put him in the top 15 when you have, potentially like a 30 hit tool and kind of an iffy approach. So if he shores up the defensive side of things a little bit more and can just run into enough home runs, I think he could be that power hitting backup type of catcher. But there's still time. And as we know with catchers, sometimes it doesn't click till age 26, 27. He has the tools though to be a big league catcher.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're going to get into the top 15 here, which starts with a former big ticket IFA guy that actually started to take a step in the right direction last year in Cristian Hernandez. Before that, our first break. All right, 15, Cristian Hernandez. And right when you think maybe he's fading out of the prospect realm, he gives you just good enough of a year and just good enough of underlying to say, hey, let's pay attention to this guy a little bit more closely for another year here and see how it goes. Another thing where it's I mean, the guy was 20 years old last year still. Yeah. Prospect fatigue for sure when you're a big ticket IFA guy, $3 million in 2021.
Yeah.
I think at this point, it's probably clear that he's never going to be a batting title contender. But at the same time, he did cut down the chase to the point where he's walking at a good clip. And you can't deny the bat speed. He hits the crap out of the ball when everything's on time. Defensively, probably projects best at second base, but I could see a power hitting second baseman here. He's a good runner, and I think really started to add that side to his game. 44 bags last year. That you love to see that. It's like, what are some other ways that you can separate yourself and get closer to being that regular? Above average approach, above average power, above average speed. You move him over to second. He could probably be a fine defender there. You can, if you squint, you could see, an everyday second baseman here, power hitting second baseman here. But the other side is reverse splits guy. So I was kind of hoping, I'm like, oh, we could have like a power hitting short platoon, but maybe that works in his favor to be a bulk platoon guy. And he just continues to get better and better and better at hitting righties. But a 90th percentile of 105 miles per hour as a 20-year-old, and there's still some more room to add strength here. He could hit 20 to 25 home runs from at second base and walk enough to hedge the lower batting average.
I didn't do many check-ins since he was lauded as the second coming. And I will say my recent check-in, I was pretty encouraged because when I first watched the YouTube videos or whatever you could gather when Cristian Hernandez was going to be the next big thing, he was a lanky kid. Like he absolutely looked like a kid. And now I think the measurements, paint that picture at 6'2", 185, but he's filled out, man. Like, I think this can be a physical second baseman too, which is exciting. And I think Major League Baseball demands physicality now, more so than it probably ever has. And he looks like he's got the big league frame now. You could get over the lack of bat to ball if he leans into that physical frame and he does achieve that 50 future game power that you've got listed here.
Very big discrepancy. You got 35 present, 50 future, but again, he was 20 last year, and I think there was a focus on let me just compete out there and hit, and he did that, right? It was a solid season, but as he gets more comfortable with his feel to control those long levers, I'm glad you mentioned like it is longer levers. He's going to need to elevate the ball more. He popped a 114 last year, but when your hard hit launch angle is below 10 degrees and your ground ball rate's 51%. There's just not enough loft at this point. I'm okay with that when you're 20 years old, trying to find your footing for the first time as a professional. I think he found it. Now you get into next season where he'll get his second taste of high A. And I think that's where it's okay, let me try to create some more leverage in the swing and loft and let's try to hit 20 home runs. And, if he does that, he could still be a regular at second base.
Yep.
A guy that I think it's more of a question about the glove, but the bat looked really good. And I know you got to get a look at him in the Arizona Fall League at 14 is Jonathon Long. Johnny Long, he makes it look kind of easy in the box, which is the interesting part where this is more of like a projection versus what you're currently seeing in terms of like, you might see the 40 hit tool there and you're like, well, he hit really well for average and everything. When you look at the swing and the way that he operates and some of the underlying stuff, I think ultimately, he's going to be slightly below average big league hitter. But this guy hits the crap out of the ball. Like it's hard line drives and he gets into the pull side pop. But what I love about his swing, and when I say love, it's probably not like the exactly how I draw it up.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see a guy operate a little bit more just unique and make it work. He's very upright. His hands are just kind of waggling right behind his ear. And he just like picks his foot up and puts it down and rotates from a very upright position. And normally I see a guy like that and I'm like, oh, like he's naturally, you're going to teeter forward. You're not really going to use the ground well to tap into power. He does though. Like he's a crazy explosive rotator, even from a very narrow position. And that's why he was able to sport a 90th percentile exit velocity of 106 miles per hour. You pair that with the ability to pull the ball in the air and you've got a guy that put together a ridiculous season in high A, double A, and in the fall league.
Strong dude, hit well. Like that's really all I got on Jonathon Long, man. I loved watching him in the box, and I'm with you. He makes it look easy. And if I could make a double-A hitter, like I'm not thinking about the top 100 prospect that's hanging out in double-A. I'm thinking about my baseline double-A hitter. I'm trying to win a double-A championship. I want a lot of bats that look like Jonathon Long.
That's the thing. You're not going to have 500 prospects that are top 30 worthy, right? But this is another scouting example. Now Jonathon Long's hit his way into being a top 15 prospect. But this is why you see teams like even the Rays are a big example of this too. There's so much underrated value in the kind of positionless guys or the first base guys. And I don't know where else Jonathon Long can really play. I think you should hope that you can stash him in left and make it work, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because he's a little short for first base. I think he's listed at 6 foot. It might be closer to 5'11", 5'10". I think you can make that work if you're a good athlete, and I think he's athletic enough. I don't think third base is going to work from everything I saw there.
Fair.
But this is a guy that absolutely can be. This is the short platoon guy where I can see it very easily at the very least, where he's destroying lefties, and you have him part-time at first. You stash him in left. He comes off the bench, whatever it may be. But these are the guys that you take him in the 9th round. No one's really thinking anything of it. A lot of times you're absolutely firing from the hip, in the 9th round, trying to go for somebody that has crazy stuff but can't throw strikes or whatever it may be. Sometimes a guy that just put up good numbers, but you just think he's capped, can end up being actually a solid potential big league piece. And I think Jonathon Long's going to be a solid platoon piece potentially.
Yeah.
13, Christian Franklin went unselected in the Rule 5, but I wanted, this is actually a great opportunity to touch on this topic. Just because you weren't selected, a player wasn't selected in the Rule 5 draft does not mean that no team wants him. It means that no team felt as though it was worth forcing him into the big leagues right now
for 162,
where he's at in his development or the position that he plays.
Yeah,
with Franklin, it's more of where he's at in his development.
And for 162, I think that's the biggest caveat there, where Nasim Nunez hung out on the Nats roster for 162. They were operating with a 25-man roster.
Which was crazy, by the way.
It's nuts. It's nuts. And you don't have the liberty of optioning that guy for an entire season. There are 29 other teams that would have grabbed Christian Franklin if he was DFA'd and needed to be added to a 40-man roster. He fits on so many of those, I think. But, I mean, dude, like, he just wasn't ready for 162 in the major leagues.
No. And that's the thing that I think gets a little bit mixed up here. I mean, there's some really good arms that didn't get taken that absolutely will have good big league careers. No doubt about it in my mind. And Franklin has some things that he needs to clean up. Don't get me wrong, but this is a player that in a year he will, if he does what we think he can do, and if he takes another step in the right direction, and that would be hitting the ball in the air, because geez, he needs to do that. But like if he starts to elevate a little bit more, the glove has come along to where I think he can play a good center field. You can move him all around. He's a good runner. He's become a factor on the base paths. Elite plate discipline. And that's why I think people were floating his name a little bit more as a guy that you can maybe stash, because he's going to, even if he's not going to hit a ton, he's going to give you good ABs and then go play good defense. But I just don't think that if the glove was maybe plus in center instead of above average, maybe a team does it. Like Nasim Nunez, right? He's an elite glove in the infield. Yeah. Still crazy that they did that. I'm glad for Nas, but
you're right.
That was a very, very bold move.
Congrats on the checks, man.
Yeah, I was pumped for Nas. Yeah, I was get that big league minimum, baby.
Right.
But the interesting thing with Franklin here is mechanically very, very bizarre swing.
Yeah,
a lot of his swings, he doesn't even rotate his back foot. Like he's just swinging and his both feet are still pointing like where he was when he was set up. But he is so twitchy that he hits the ball pretty hard. But when he literally, because he's not rotating that way, and like sometimes it's kind of out of sync, he gets his foot down in tons of different times. Sometimes it's super early and he's just waiting there, and then he's just throwing his hands at it. Other times it's a little bit later and he looks rushed. He needs to find something that's a little bit more repeatable for him. And I think one of the more direct correlations is between ground ball rate, or like one of the, I would say, best indicators towards ground ball rate is inconsistent timing to me. Yeah. Because then you're either out front, you're catching it deep. That's exactly what Franklin's issue was. 61% ground ball rate almost last year. But the EVs are pretty good. And, the field to hit isn't bad and the approach is elite. He's going to be a big leaguer. It's just, in what capacity.
Yeah, I'm just looking at 3 tools, and I'm seeing a plus plate discipline. I'm seeing plus runner and plus defender, and I know that he's capable in all 3 outfield spots. The floor is big leaguer. The floor is 4th outfield or 5th outfield or whatever it may be, and the fact that he ran a 90th of 104, I understand that that's not lighting the world on fire, but
it's above big league average.
It's dude, like that means he could run into 10, 15 if he was forced into playing 140 games in a given season, which is exciting enough when you're getting a sure-handed runner, defender, and a guy that's going to walk 10% of the time at least if he has a full big league sample.
Really ramped up the bags this past year, 34 and 98 games. And I love that side of it too, to really just like round out that profile.
Yeah.
12 is a speculative rank here, but I liked the limited views that I got him. You can look at the write-up. It's super short. Ronny Cruz, shortstop, 3rd round pick in 2024, surprising 3rd round pick. But according to MLB Pipeline, he had a 2nd round grade by the Cubs. And the more I dug in, the more I could see why. And we just talked about Cubs scouting. I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt before actually seeing anything. But when you do start to see it, then you can kind of say, hey, well, they've had a lot of success and I can see the ingredients here. This is a player that defensively looks like he has all the tools to stick it short. Offensively, it's further behind, but I think you can see average hit and power potentially on the table. He's a good runner. He had a knee issue, but I think he could end up turning in plus run times as he gets further away from that knee issue. This is a guy that I think floor ceiling wise is interesting because the bat speed's there. And if he starts tapping into that more and more, you can just kind of wipe out these scouting grades and start all over again. And it's a guy that's going to be able to stick it short. So you have a plus runner who can stick it short, who's flashing above average bat speed and a decent feel for the zone. This is probably the guy that I'm most excited to see make his full season debut or wherever he's going to really play this coming season. Whether it's at the complex again, I'm just excited to see a more extended opportunity of Ronny Cruz this coming season.
Did you watch Old School?
No, I don't think so.
Really? You would love Old School. That's Luke Wilson, Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, all that when they buy a frat house, pretty much.
No, I don't think that sounds great.
It's hilarious. Yeah, Old School. One of the, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but one of the things that Will Ferrell has to do is debate against James Carville, who's a legendary debater, and Will Ferrell just has this out-of-body experience. And James Carville at the end says, I have nothing to add. I have no response. That was perfect. I've got nothing to add on Ronny Cruz, but I'm excited that you're excited.
Hell yeah. I love it. I love it. And again, the way that he moves it short, also young for the class. It's another thing I should have mentioned. He'll be 18 for almost the entirety of the season. And if he's at the complex, he'll be 18 for the entirety of the season. So that's another wrinkle in this whole thing as well.
Yeah.
Number 11, Cole Mathis. Another player that I'm just interested to see what it looks like because what he was able to do at College of Charleston and on the Cape was really impressive. It's a unique swing. So I'm just interested to see what it looks like in a professional setting, for an extended period of time, because we didn't actually even get to see him make his pro debut last season. Mathis, 2nd round pick, 54th overall. He's one of those players where you're weighing it out. I think scouts may be a little bit more skeptical, and then people that skew towards the analytics more will be a little bit more bullish. Of course, here we try to mesh both of those, and that's why I feel myself kind of in the middle here. Yeah. There's no doubting the batted ball data, and what almost pushed him into the top 10 for me was looking at the batted ball data with Wood at Katuitt. And that's the thing is like this guy put up, and I know it's not what it was once on the Cape offensively, but still it's just seeing what the batted ball data looks like and the numbers look like with Wood. 36 games on the Cape before his draft year. Guy hit 324, 386, 655.
Yeah.
11 homers. Like that's impressive stuff. And hitting the ball hard. Like the difference is the EVs, with Metal, it was like 106, 90th percentile. With Wood, it was closer to like 104. Yeah. So then you wonder against like better competition, does it slip a little bit more? But his ability to elevate the baseball to the pull side, especially 35% ground ball rate, and he creates those angles, really stands out. There's a chance he's just a full-time first baseman, though. The Cubs announced him as a third baseman. We know teams will announce anybody as anything a lot of the time.
Torque was a third baseman.
Yeah, exactly. But Mathis does have a rocket for an arm. He was their best player at College of Charleston by a lot. I think he led their team in ERA too, and he ran it up to 96 on the mound. So you hope that the arm maybe can help him get away with iffy range, and if the hands are good enough, maybe he can play, a passable third.
That's the thing that excites me most, and I don't know much about the offensive profile except for what you just laid out. I'm just thinking if he can run it up to 96 there, and he was a talented pitcher, I would love to see this guy survive at third base.
Yeah.
Like, there are some pitching converts like Alec Burleson and, even your friend of mine, Matt Mervis. Like, these are guys that I would love to see him get by in a corner. And Burleson's doing a decent job of that, but like he's kind of a DH right now. Like, let's see that arm play, man. I thought Harper was so fun to watch when, we knew that he could run it up to 95 when he was in high school and cut it loose from behind the dish. Like, I was so excited to see Harper let it fly in right field.
Yeah.
And I would love to
that's
see
another thing too. Like maybe Mathis, you can stash him in right, if he works on the agility. That's the thing is, people are very limiting sometimes with the athletic ability and agility. Some guys just, they're not gonna be able to add it. But I think it does get underestimated at how players can add agility and quickness.
They're pro athletes. Like there's training for that, and they're going to go through it. And chances are they could see results from that training.
I'll never forget how pissed Griff was when I think it was a pipeline write up on him. Said he'll probably move to first base. And when he got drafted, he's like, "There's no way. I won't allow. Like I will do agility. I will do ladder drills until I die." But some guys don't prioritize that as much, and I think honestly, that's where the makeup side of things can get baked into it too. But Mathis earned time marks for that, and if he moves well on the mound, you'd like to think that maybe he can be stashed somewhere else. But if he does have to move to first base, there is above average power to dream on, and that could be enough to carry the position.
Yep.
The other half of the aforementioned trade at number 10, Jack Neely, right-hander, very puzzling for me to figure out the fastball situation because he's 6'8", and he throws hard. And again, the other part of the Mark Leiter deal. But Neely, his fastball got hit way harder than it should have. He sits 96, and in some outings was sitting more 97. He gets pretty good vert. He's very tall, and it's over the top. And that's what we talk about, right? And so that part made sense to me. Where it's like, okay, tall guys over the top, even if you're getting good vert, it's all relative. And oftentimes it's just an easy angle for hitters to see.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with Neely is the whiff rates were pretty good on the fastball in the zone and overall. Were they, elite? No, but they were pretty good. Yet his fastball yielded between his big league debut and the minor leagues an OPS north of 1,000. Man, here's the other side of it though. That might be one of the best sliders in New York.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous from that release point. So it's like, okay, that release point may work against him with the fastball, but a gyro slider from a 6'8", 6'9" guy, like good luck. You've got no shot. And just to provide the other side of it, 456 OPS against this slider with a 30% swinging strike rate and a near 40% chase rate. So you're not going to hit the slider. But the fastball has the ingredients, like he gets slightly above average extension. It's not like he's releasing from a 6'6" release head. It's 6'2". And 6'2" is actually slightly below average for a 6'8" pitcher.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, though, it just seems to be a relatively easy angle for hitters. And I think part of that might be just because of where he's locating the fastball.
Sure. And location can change. Location can get better. And you've got a 55 future on the command. It's not really slider command that anybody's worried about because the slider's already gross enough to survive regardless of where it's going. So fastball command, it's something that sounds like this abstract concept, but when you find repeatability at 6'8", 230, and I will say it's harder to come by at 6'8", 230 than it is at 6 foot 190. But I mean, it's doable, man. And I think you absolutely have a leverage reliever here. I think as soon as opening day, maybe we'll see what happens in camp. But, there were guys like I'm thinking about Crosstown, Jordan Leisure. what really separates those two builds, right? Leisure was the fastball, but Neely's the slider. And,
Yep.
these guys are both, it seems like big league ready.
Ignore the ETA. I guess that slipped through the cracks
Ooh.
there. Yeah, he's already been there. He debuted last year and showed pretty well in spurts. But I agree that was the thing that stood out to me the most. I'm like, if you got a 6'8" righty that is filling it up the way that he is, I've got confidence that he can maybe find a feel to locate the fastball a little bit better and maybe just find a little bit more feel to spin that thing. And if he does, I mean, that fastball slider combination will make him a great 7th or 8th inning guy. And he grabbed the 10 spot over some of the guys with higher upside because he could be in that bullpen tomorrow and I think be a solid arm in that bullpen with a chance with a little bit more fastball development. Maybe he even, tinkers with a splitter from that release point. Holy crap. Where then you could start talking about, 9th inning guy. I don't think you can rule that out.
Yeah.
Number 9. A guy that did tinker with some stuff and found plenty of success last year. And we talk about themes and systems.
Mm-hmm.
Cut ride fastballs. Brandon Birdsell is another cut ride fastball in this Cubs system. And he found a lot of success with it this past year. He's a stocky guy, 6'2", 250, 5th round pick in 2022. But when the thing I see with cut ride fastballs, they might be and fastballs in general, of course, are going to be velocity dependent, but cut ride fastballs may be as velocity dependent as anything, where I think when you start to get to the 95 range, that pitch can just start to dominate. And we've seen that where I think lefties can get away with the lower velo cut ride because there's not a lot of lefties that even just have that cut ride look. And that's why Wicks, has been able to be effective at points Steele has been able to be effective despite not being higher in velocity. Righties, I think, when you start to see it push from 93 to 94, 95, you start to see those big whiff numbers. It's exactly where Birdsell was at last year, averaged 94 or 94.7. You can round it to 95 because the velo kept getting a little bit stronger as the season progressed. He's without a doubt a supinator, though. I mean, and every cut ride fastball guy is going to be. The thing that's interesting with Birdsell is fastball has that cut ride, and then he has a true cutter off of that at like 89. That pitch is gross. The only reason why I didn't push it like a little bit, maybe north of 60, it's 55 present, 60 futures. He only threw it 10% of the time. But as the season progressed, he started really ramping it up. And by his last 10 starts, he was throwing it 26% of the time. So you have cut ride fastball and cutter. They're different enough in shape where it works. And both those pitches can work against both handedness. But he's going to need a third pitch here. The changeup is way behind. The slider looks like it could be an average third pitch.
Mm-hmm.
But what hedges the lack of like true third pitch at this point is the fact that the command is fantastic. He walked 5% of batters last year.
Right. With the way that his arsenal moved, I was expecting him to just kill righties. But I'm looking at, the overall season-long numbers, and righties slugged more against him than lefties did. So, righties hit about 8 points lower. It was a 268 batting average against compared to a 275 against lefties. But OPS against right-handed bats was 757. It was 695 against lefties. So you think that it's going to get better against righties if everything is moving away from their barrel. I will also say his delivery is weird. Like the arm path is weird and the glove hand is weird. It's got to throw some people off. And I saw him in Des Moines against Indy. I think it was July 26. It was not great. It was like 3 innings, 8 hits, 4 earned. But I left it really encouraged with how around the strike zone he was. And if he can find the north-south thing, I mean, you're working right to left against all these guys, man. It's fun.
And the interesting thing is, I think the reason why righties fared a little bit better is he would go to that slider more. And I think there's just intent like, okay, I need to get this pitch going.
Yeah.
And I think the slider it's too much of a slower version of the cutter. And it moves different, but not different enough. And he's going to need to find, it's really hard for a guy like that to find like a sweeper, of course. But like, if he can find something that's more horizontal, even just to throw to righties.
Yeah.
That cutter will work enough vertically, and the cut ride fastball could work enough too. So like he could find that 12-6 curve and work more, vertically.
I feel
or
like
he can go sweeper. I
feel
don't know
like
what's easier. Probably the curveball.
Probably the curveball. I also feel like it would just play from that weird arm path that we're talking about here, where he's almost back here. Like I talk a lot about the quarterback slot, where a quarterback, if you look, I mean, a quarterback will have the football right next to their ear, right next to the helmet. And that's kind of where he's coming from, man. And like, I feel like that can snap off if you can turn the wrist like that.
Most cut rod guys are going to be like that football type of throw.
Exactly.
Which is a good point. Look, the Cubs have done a really good job of helping pitchers to develop and add that third pitch. If Birdsell adds, finds a more consistent shape for the third pitch that works, I think you could definitely feel good about him being a back end of the rotation starter. But even with that fastball cutter combination, with the uptick in velocity and the increased usage with success of the cutter, he's going to be a good swing man, I think, at the very least.
Yeah.
Number 8, guy that's different. I think higher ceiling, much lower floor, and I am very excited to see another year from him as he gets further removed from Tommy John surgery. Jaxon Wiggins, another tall arm in this system, and it seems like the Cubs also like to grab some tall pitchers. Wiggins, second round pick in 2023. They took over like the very end of his Tommy John rehab and really helped usher him back onto the field because he had undergone Tommy John, I think, during his collegiate career. Stuff wise, holy crap. We're talking about a fastball that sat average 96.5 and held, and what I love from him is off of Tommy John making his pro debut, looked better and better and better as the season progressed, and the velocity held as the season progressed. He is going to need to throw more strikes. And as a 6'7" right-hander, that it checks out that he might struggle to do that at this point. But he's also coming off of Tommy John surgery as well. So he does have historically some struggles throwing strikes. But the fact that he was able to throw enough strikes to turn lineups over and survive, right? Like it wasn't like he was blowing up and walking 5 and 6 in an outing. He aside from the rehab starts, if you just start from low A onward, he did not have an outing where he walked more than 3. It's more just about the strike rate overall. And I think the reason why he was able to mitigate the walks enough was that he could just lean back on his upper 90s fastball as a 6'7" righty and overpower those lower level hitters. He's got the potential for an elite arsenal. The changeup is flash plus. The slider looks like it's at least above average if he can command it, but could also be a plus pitch. You could have 3+ pitches here from a 6'7" frame.
I was trying to think about who the Arsenal reminded me of, and it's not a frame comp, but it's an Arsenal comp and like the lack of command comp. Maddox Bruns in LA.
Yeah.
That's the other one where I'm like, you have so much ability here. Let's find the zone. And that's exactly what's going on here. Yeah. Like I'm very intrigued by Wiggins, and Wiggins has a lot more tread left on his tires than Bruns does, because Bruns has been around for a couple of years at this point. But I mean, the promise is tantalizing.
It's a pretty easy delivery too for what he's able to generate, and that was the thing that stood out to me too. I'm like, it's not that high effort. It's pretty smooth. So it's just a matter of just repeating that release point and everything. And it's hard to do that when you're as long and lanky as he is. But the fastball got better and better and better from a shape perspective as the year progressed, and that stood out to me too. Because remember, it's like the grip side of things off of TJ and just feeling it off your fingers. It seemed like that got better as he just seemed to get more innings under his belt. Yeah. The whiff numbers on the changeup and the slider are crazy, and he actually located the changeup well. That's the other thing that really made me feel confident about his chances, relatively speaking, of figuring it all out. We're talking about a guy that has issues throwing strikes at this point, but has a feel for a changeup. So you're like, the changeup strike rate was the highest amongst all of his pitches, including his fastball. Yeah. So that makes you think, okay, maybe it's in there. Maybe he can just continue to get closer and closer to where he needs to be. If the command's even 40 grade, he could stick in the rotation because he'll get enough whiffs. But that's a guy that if the command doesn't come along, he'll be potentially elite at leverage.
Yeah.
Number 7. I don't know for the low guys, because he's a kind of polarizing to a degree. I think, even though he shouldn't be, I don't know. James Triantos. I have utility at this point.
Okay.
But I think he's a second baseman personally. Okay. I think that's where he should play. and long term, and ignoring the big league situation. Maybe you give him more run in center field, but I think there's a reason. I'm not going to pretend I've been able to see a lot of reps of him in center field, but I feel like the Cubs probably would have had him do more of that if they liked how it looked. He just mixed in very sparingly at the end of the year. I do think that could be another that would really amplify his value. If he could play an average center field, he'd be probably closer to the top 5. My concern is I'm trying to just figure out what this is the role thing, right?
Yeah.
This guy rakes. You cannot deny the numbers. You cannot deny the field to hit. It's one of the best hit tools in the minor leagues, probably, and definitely the best hit tool in the organization.
Yeah.
But then you have well below average power. Shaky's probably harsh because he recognizes spin well, but he's not going to be a walk machine. It's not great plate discipline. It's fine. He's a good runner, and being a menace on the base paths helps. But hit over everything and not much defensive value. What the third base ship kind of sailed. It seems like it's second base at this point. Maybe you can stash him in left. But like, what is the big league role here for a James Triantos if he's not, and I know people are saying, oh, well, he can maybe get into more power. Okay. I'm a little bit more bearish on that. I don't know how much more power is in there. We saw it actually kind of trend the other direction this past year. And he seems kind of maxed out physically.
Yeah, I think it's a fine second baseman. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, you've got an everyday second baseman here. Is he an all-star? No, I don't think so. I think he's just a guy that you look at and say, we're pretty happy with our second base situation right now in the major leagues. And how valuable is that? Is that the 5th best prospect in this system? Is it the 7th best prospect in this system? And I think he starts tier 2. I think there's a big drop-off between tier 2 and tier 3 in this organization, but he's absolutely tier 2. The question is, how does he measure up with guys that are pretty much 4 through 7 on this list? And I would take a good everyday second baseman. I'd probably take him last over the guys that, we're talking about here.
You have a high probability big leaguer. If he walked, I'd feel a lot better. But what you can hope is that maybe if he puts the ball in the air a little bit more, but then once he starts doing that, you're losing some of that. Just he throws his hands at the ball and shoots it, through the hole. And that's what makes him so impressive. Yeah. But it's also a guy that, is there's better defenses and things like that. You're not going to get away with quite as much, sneaking balls through and all that stuff. But I do think that this is somebody that, at the very least is going to put up great batting average numbers. Like you look at a guy like Donovan Solano and the career that he's carved out. The difference is Solano hits the ball harder, but just say that's a guy that did not have much defensive utility, not nearly as much of a factor in the base paths, and is still kicking and has had a nice career. And I think Triantos can definitely be better than that. So there's a role for those guys, but they end up scraping and bouncing around a little bit more because just teams aren't, knocking down doors for that type of profile at this point. And I think I have utility. I probably really should just put second base at this point because it maybe would have helped his case more if he could move around more.
Right.
A little bit of almost the complete opposite. And that's why this whole thing is so hard sometimes, like ranking 6 versus 7 here. Kevin Alcantara couldn't be any different. I think if you put these two guys together, it might be the best player in the world. Right. Alcantara checks in at 6, got a taste of the big leagues at the end of the year. If you remember, $1 million IFA guy in 2018, traded for Anthony Rizzo as part of that package. He continues to put up numbers and solid numbers. I think he's good for like a 120 WRC plus at every single stop. At the same time, you look at the underlying batted ball data and you look at the swing and it's like, is that going to work at the big league level? I still lean towards it will be tough, but he keeps inching closer to where he needs to be, right? And my big concern with him is he's so tall and long, and the swing is so long that I think it's really hard to consistently be on time. And he also has to kind of cheat a little bit to get the barrel out. And in doing that, results in him chasing sliders a ton. Like he's going to wave at a ton of sliders. I think he could get a little bit overwhelmed at times with, hard stuff inside. Yeah. But the floor is high despite that because he's a plus runner. He's a plus defender in center field, especially when he's locked in.
Yeah.
And that's going to make him a high probability big leaguer. I see fringy hit, below average approach. That did get better.
Yeah.
It got better, but it's fringy hit, fringy approach. And he hasn't been able to fully tap into the game power because for his entire professional career at this point, he's put the ball on the ground.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really changed much at all.
Yeah.
So it's like people say, oh, well, when he starts to get the ball in the air, I just think the levers and the swing may just be too long for this guy to get the ball in the air consistently. And actually the ground ball rate crept up this past season.
So, I mean, I feel like you've made your claim here having Alcantara ahead of Triantos because the tools are nuts guy is much better than the we know exactly what you are guy. And I understand the promise of Alcantara. The ceiling for Alcantara is 2 to 3 times the player Triantos is.
Yeah.
And it's a floor ceiling conversation. And I think the ceiling is too high for Kevin Alcantara to have him below James Triantos. And that is the burden of the top 100. And that's the burden of like all of these rankings that you do, right? Top 100 prospects, team rankings, you do positional rankings, that kind of thing. It's a floor versus ceiling conversation. And I think the ceiling is higher for Alcantara than the floor is high for Triantos.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing too, though, is I think it's an easier path to Alcantara. It's a war conversation too. So I'm trying to project here with these guys. Like for Triantos, he's going to need to hit close to 300 to produce multi-war. Kevin Alcantara, if he put together his AAA slash line at the highest level, it might take a few years for him to do that.
For sure.
But if or just his slash line last year, if he put together a 768 OPS, he's probably close to a 4-win player.
Yeah, exactly.
If he's locked in on defense.
And his bad seasons are going to be, negative win player. Like it's going to be a lot lower than Triantos. But Triantos is like bad seasons and his good seasons are going to look way too similar.
Yes. And I think what ultimately ended up helping Alcantara's case is, the bad seasons offensively would be a disaster potentially, but the glove would give him a shot, to at least be that like fourth outfielder. Yeah. And again, like you're going to have to really, really hit if you're Triantos. And Alcantara is 22 years old. So you're hoping that he can continue to shorten up and find something there. But if he's 20 to 25 home runs, which he can easily do, his 90th percentile is 106 miles per hour. Yeah. And even if it's 230, 240 with the defense and speed, he should be a valuable player. So I feel confident that he's at least a fourth outfielder that runs into, some home runs. And you've got that like Jake Marisnick type of profile in the worst case.
Yeah.
Number 5, Jefferson Rojas. We talked about him as I think in the mailbag, if I'm not mistaken, where it was like one of the questions was, who's a prospect that kind of like had an iffy year last year that you think maybe ran into some bad luck or, is going to shake it off and have a great year next year? Jefferson Rojas was one of my first answers. It wasn't a bad year by any stretch. And this is a guy that's been pushed aggressively as a middle infielder and still 19 years old, by the way. He'll be 19 years old until about a month into the season and already has a ton of high A games under his belt. Pretty much played the whole season at high A last year. Actually did play the whole season at high A last year. So I don't know if they're going to repeat him there. Maybe they repeat him there to start the year. They probably should.
Yeah. Just
because trying to get right in the Southern League as a hit over power guy at this stage would be tough. You start him in South Bend and then, maybe around his 20th birthday, a month in, you can push him up to Double A if things look good. Yeah. But you look at the offensive underlying data, he's not far off contact rates wise from Triantos, especially in zone, 89% in zone contact. The approach is pretty good. I'm betting on like average game power eventually here from Rojas. The bat speed's legit. If he could just clean some things up with the lower half, I do think he can hit 15 to 20 home runs. And with, above average hit, above average run, I still think that he could get by it short. Maybe he moves over to second base, but if he's above average hit, average power, above average run, and he would be, I think, an above average defender at second base, it's a solid everyday player.
Absolutely. And he's just got all the time in the world. And I think that's something that you really need to prioritize when you're looking at this, where, and you bring this up a lot. What's this guy going to look like when he's so and so's age? You know what I mean? What's this guy
Yeah.
going to look like when he's Owen Caissie's age? And Owen Caissie's really young. What's he going to look like when when he's Ian Happ's age or Nico Horner's age? I think you can play that game with Jefferson Rojas, where he's so green, he's so raw, yet we've seen so much to be excited about. How can you not dream on this?
Yeah.
And even if there's a year that it seems like it was, particularly underwhelming, guess what? Like, it was his age 19 season.
Yeah.
He's going to be 20 years old next year. And okay, starts in South Bend again, a month there. Then he goes to AA Tennessee. He's 20 years old in AA. We're fine.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, if he can just inch a little bit closer, and he's going to get stronger. There's room for strength in the frame.
Yeah.
And he drives it to all fields. He's driving the ball in the air. It's just, I think, a little bit more consistency of just getting into that lower half. This is a really, really well-rounded player. And yeah, like you said, has all the time in the world. Even in this quote unquote down year where he has a 646 OPS, he only struck out 15% of the time, being challenged as, an 18/19-year-old in high A.
Yeah.
We're going to get to number 4, Moises Ballesteros, in a moment here. Before that, our last break. Here's Ballesteros, who really impressed with the bat when we were out there in the Arizona Fall League. But we've got to see him in a few different settings. We got to see his AAA debut together. I came out and visited you in Indy, and then got to see him just mash in the AFL. This dude can hit. It's just that simple. And he makes it look as natural as just about anybody in this system in terms of blending the power and just a smooth, sweet swing from the left side. He has the big leg kick and all these things going on, but he's one of those guys where you just throw it to the wayside because he gets to where he needs to be and he repeats it all the time. I'm positive he probably pisses people off, like teammates off, with how he's able to do what he does just so naturally. Yeah. The big question, as it will always be, is the glove with him. And he's been working nonstop. I think he's been out there the entire offseason working on the glove. And if he can get to a point where he is not a liability behind the dish, then, I mean, you're in a great spot. The problem is I still am skeptical that can happen. He's inching better. Like, there was a point in time where I was like, I think no shot. Now it's at the point where it's like, I think you can catch him 40, 50 games if he takes another half step in the right direction and you're not losing your mind. And then offensively, it'll justify it without a doubt with the bat speed that he possesses and everything from the left side. But it really just comes down to, I mean, if he is an average catcher, which I think is far-fetched, but if he's an average catcher, he's an absolute force and potentially, one of the more exciting young catchers in the game. What I think he ultimately settles in at and why he's 4 on this list is that it's probably part-time catcher, DH. He's too short for first base. So he's got to really hit. He can really hit. But that's a difficult role to accumulate a ton of WAR in, right? So he can hit 25 home runs, no problem. Maybe as he continues to grow, like in terms of as a hitter, I don't think there's much more room to fill out, but maybe just even converting into more strength, he could push closer to 30. Yeah. But the field of hit and power combination is rare. It's just, what's the role? And how much DHing is he going to do?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that I heard from Cubs convention, aside from Sammy Sosa being, kind of welcome back into the Cub family, was Ballesteros is apparently down like 20-ish pounds. Ballesteros, he's worked really hard on his body, burning fat and adding muscle. Like, apparently he's, we poke fun at best shape of your life season when guys show up to spring training, but it does seem like, from a couple of credible reports and people that actually saw him at Cubs convention, that he's in the best shape of his life. And that's phenomenal. And that would be awesome. If he's got staying power behind the dish, Cubs have one of the brightest futures in Major League Baseball because they have the catching situation down pat. And you get away from Carson Kelly and Miguel Amaya by the All-Star break.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you could have Kelly catching, regularly, and then Ballesteros easing his way in there. But yeah, and then the more comfortable he looks, like, you can roll with that. limiting the run game was tough, but you imagine just getting more agile and quick. It as simple as trimming those 20 pounds and moving better can get him to that 40 grade catcher. If he's a 40 grade catcher, he is with the offensive potential, could very easily be a top 10 catcher in the game. We talked about it though on the Just Baseball show. That position is loaded now, but very easily could be that. He threw out 12% of base stealers last year. He did look better in the AFL in a limited sample there in doing so. And it's just kind of like getting up and being quicker back there. I think blocking wise is probably the biggest concern. But I know, again, that's another thing is you just get more agile. That'll help. Receiving, you just hope that continues to get better. And it seems like it has. It started at a very low point. The receiving has definitely gotten better. So you feel better about where the receiving's at. Technically, he's gotten a little bit better. If he can push to that point, I mean, he could be a monster because the bat, man, like he's elevating to all fields. It is whippy bat speed. And we saw a 113 out there in the AFL?
I think so.
And I mean, we're talking about some big time pop. But what I like is even when he mishits balls, he's backspinning them and they're carrying to all fields. Doesn't strike out. And by the way, he did this as a 20-year-old last year at the upper levels. He's a heck of a hitter, and he's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Another guy that's a heck of a hitter, and a guy that we've had on the show. Awesome interview, which by the way, it's right under the write-up. Owen Caissie. Caissie feels like he's getting a little forgotten here all of a sudden. A little bit of prospect fatigue maybe on the Caissie front. He's 22 years old. He was 21 for, I would say, more than half of the season last year, and put up another above average season at AAA. The EVs were slightly down from what we're used to. And he talked about it with us, just about the challenge that was handling this more advanced landscape of pitching.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that has 70 power. I mean, this guy can hit 40 home runs as he gets more settled in. We didn't see it as much in AAA, but again, still productive, has continued to cut down the swing and miss. If you look at the underlying contact rates, they're not bad. 68% contact rate, 77% in zone. That's more than enough for a guy that's got 70 power potential. And the contact rates, have held, pretty strong throughout that entire season. He hits lefties well, which I think is very big. So you're not worried as much about platooning and things like that. The approach has gotten better. The glove has gotten better. And I think he's a fine right fielder, and he's got a 70 arm out there. So, I mean, it's all about the hit. The biggest thing I'd like to see from him is lean into the 3 true outcomes a little bit more and walk. And he did walk at a 12% clip, but that's a guy that should probably trim the chase a little bit more. Yeah. And look, he's not going to hit 280 at the big league level, right? It's probably going to be 230, 240. If you're getting on base at a 340 clip with the power that he has, that's going to be more than enough. I still love him as just a power hitting right fielder.
He can get by in a corner, man, and I think he's one of the more valuable trade chips that there is in minor league baseball right now. I mean, there's no space for him in the big leagues at the moment with Chicago, and he is as big league ready as anybody that's on this list. I think more so than Matt Shaw, because he spent an entire season in AAA after spending an entire season in AA. So we're talking about a guy that obviously has some deficiencies when it comes to the hit tool, but that's okay because he's a big burly dude that you said could hit 40 if it all clicks. And I don't know. I would be peppering Jed Hoyer's phone if I were looking for San Diego, bring him home. If I were looking for a corner outfielder right now, I would be peppering Jed Hoyer.
Oh my gosh, that actually is the perfect trade. Like a Dylan Cease or something. I know you don't want to probably move,
but they want to move Cease and King.
And Caissie's a guy that you could plug right in, and he would then be able to not fully be selling the season for you, right? You're not trading for some lower level prospect. You're trading for a guy that could get up and help you right away. One of the things that stands out to me too is, like, again, some of the numbers took a little bit of a hit as a 21-year-old in AAA when you talk about the underlying batted ball data and things like that. Yeah. But let's just talk about 2023 real quick, because that was in an environment that's really tough to hit in. Yeah. He struck out 31% of the time in AA, but we saw what it looks like when he is not pushed off balance as much. I think AAA secondaries and execution got him off balance more, where in 2024, his 90th percentile exit velocity against fastballs was like 109 and change. And then against softer secondaries was like 104, 105, and that kind of tugged him down. But in AA in 2023, this guy ran a 90th percentile of 110 miles per hour. I think, and there may have been someone else that I was missing, but among qualified hitters in 2023, his 92 mile per hour average exit velocity would have been good for this. This is actually crazy. His 92 mile per hour average exit velocity would have been 25th in Major League Baseball in 2023. And that was as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
His 90th percentile exit velocity of 110 miles per hour would have been among the top 10 of qualified MLB hitters. Of course, those guys are facing MLB arms, but it's just showing you the power potential he has as he continues to settle in. AA, he was, I think, playing at a level where he was one of the best players and was handling it fine. AAA, he was one of the better players, but he was challenged.
He was young.
When he can get that A swing off more consistently, that's what's in the tank is top 10 EVs, right? Yeah. And I think in terms of 2023 minor league 90th percentiles, I think the only guy that would have edged that out would have been Junior Caminero. So this is a guy that can hit 35 plus, no doubt about it. And we saw him quote unquote battle last year, and it was still a good year. And the speed is underrated as well. He's not going to be a menace on the base paths, but he turns in good run times, and he grabbed 11 bags, but he can also close in, on the bases, first to third, those kind of things. He gives you more value than just your classic 6'4", 220 corner outfielder.
Yeah.
Next, number 2, Cade Horton. I was trying to figure out where to rank him after the injury last year, but I figured we got to give him a chance to come back, see what it looks like before we drop him, because you were just in town. We were talking about some like pitching prospects that have been hurt, young pitchers that have been hurt, and like how it's so easy to forget how good they are. And we're going down the Yuri Perez rabbit hole. Right. And like, everyone knows how good Yuri Perez is, but then you start watching and you're like, oh yeah, like that stuff is insane. Yeah. Like I forgot that he's got all of that going to that degree. That's kind of what happened for me when I went back down the Cade Horton rabbit hole. This is all you and I talked about in 2023. Yeah. Cade Horton, because this was a guy that was a two-way player in college at Oklahoma State and had thrown like 50 innings because he had undergone Tommy John surgery. Yeah. So now with the shoulder issue that wiped out his season, it's definitely a concern. But at the same time, this guy pitched his first full season in 23, and we saw the results, which was just pure dominance and ridiculous stuff. Cut ride fastball that averaged 96. I mean, people forget he was touching 99, like flirting with 100 with cut ride. The slider was one of the best pitches in minor league baseball in 2023. And then all of a sudden he finds this changeup, and that Vulcan change that we were talking about. And that starts looking like an above average pitch. It totally disappeared last year with the shoulder issue. So I'm just kind of I didn't know what to grade that. You can kind of just throw out the change of grade. I don't know, because it was flashing plus, at points in 23. And then with the injury, it just wasn't. And then the curveball, even he found a more distinct feel and shape for a curveball that was playing really well. Also, we're talking about a 4-pitch arsenal. You're talking about a plus fastball, a double plus slider, a changeup that flashed at least above average, and a curveball that flashed at least average above that. I mean, that's an elite pitch mix and a guy that was putting together ridiculous numbers. It's just all about the health, because in 2024, before he even, went down, we saw the velo down nearly 2 ticks. The feel for the changeup was completely gone, and he just looked like a different guy until they put him on the IL.
That's the thing. We're doing all the video dives and we're like, oh, we love this. Did you queue up 2024 video? You know what I mean? Like it was all 23 video that you're oohing and eyeing about. So you hope that 24 is just an entire wash, and 25 he comes back and it works, and he's back to 23. Like beginning of 24, I think a little bit of AA was good, and then he got to AAA, and it wasn't right at any point in AAA, I don't think. No,
it was a little bit of AA. He was good, as you said. Last outing in AA is 5 innings, shutout, 6 Ks. Yeah. But even then the velo was down a tick, and then it really slipped.
Yeah. Like I don't think we got that look at the future frontline starter at all in 2024. So I'm with you. The 23 video is awesome. And there are a lot of elite pitching prospects that fall into, going a year without giving us elite video, but that's okay. That's the nature of pitching at this point.
Here's the reality of it. I want to throw out 24 because maybe trying to throw through that.
Yeah.
But if he comes back the start of this season and it looks like the 24 stuff, doesn't mean he's can't succeed at the big league level. He can. He's above average command, and it's still 4 intriguing pitches.
But he starts to fall.
He's fallen quick.
Yeah.
So this is the highest variance guy where the midseason update, it could be a free fall, or it could be, at that point he could be in the big league level helping the Cubs. So
right.
It's a really interesting scenario there.
Right.
And I'm rooting for him because nothing makes me more sad than super talented pitchers who don't get a chance to show what they can do.
Exactly.
Number 1, I'm going to push back a little bit here. I think Matt Shaw might be even more big league ready with less reps than Owen Caissie, just because of how natural this guy is as a hitter.
Okay, now let me push back to the pushback.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go.
Is it because of the profile?
Profile helps. I think it's the fact that he is just such a natural hitter. I don't know how else to describe it. Like I don't think there's been a point in his baseball life. I would love for him to correct me on this. I should have asked him this last year, where he has not hit, whether it be in college, the Cape, every single level, Premier 12, every single spring training with the big league team. He just seems, and he's kind of in the Ballesteros realm where it's like, here's this big leg kick, and then sometimes he doesn't have the leg kick, and then sometimes he looks like he's Pete Wheeler and facing the umpire. Sometimes he's not as turned in, and it doesn't really matter. He just finds barrels left and right. The interesting thing too is kind of did everything you wanted to see from him last year. Improved drastically at third base. Maybe one of the biggest leaps defensively I've seen. Makes sense when you consider how good of an athlete he is, right? Plus runner, who the arm is short, but he compensates for that. And he must have put a lot of work in on this. His hands are amazing, and his footwork is good. He just gets it out, man. We talk about like Dansby Swanson. I wonder if that actually was any of a connection there, where it's like Dansby doesn't have the best arm in the world, but beat the ball to the spot, get it out quick, you're good. And that's exactly what Shaw started doing. And he looks like an average third baseman to me now. He also cut down the chase. That was the other thing that I was like a little concerned about. Free swinger at points. Cut the chase down by about like 6-7%. And he hits the living crap out of the ball, and it's hard to all fields. And he cut the ground ball rate by 5%. He pretty much shored up every single thing that he needed to shore up to solidify himself, I think, as, for me, he's my rookie of the year favorite. I know people are talking about Roki Sasaki. I guess Roki should be the odds-on favorite. It's a hitter award. Roki's never thrown more than 130 innings. I would pick Matt Shaw, and we'll do that. That's going to be a Just Baseball Show thing. Don't worry. But between that and the ability on the base paths too, this is a dynamic player.
Yeah, man. He's probably as it stands right now, he's probably my National League Rookie of the Year pick too. And I was just looking at like who's probably going to be there on opening day or within the first month. And I'm like, he just feels like the safest bet here. And it's fun. There are a few guys in the top 100 that I have more confidence in winning a job in spring training. And he's in a good position because it's his job to lose. But there are a lot of prospects, especially in baseball. It's a game predicated on failure. There are a lot of prospects that would be given a job to lose when they go to spring training and they hit 210, and then this vet is hitting 320, and they opt for the vet, and they'll try the young kid a month into the season.
Yeah.
It's his job to lose. I'd be flat out stunned if he didn't win it in spring training.
And especially because, the Cubs are going to want that PPI pick with the way they draft and value it.
Totally.
And they can get it, man. Like the thing that's really fascinating with him for me is just how he is so adjustable, and to the point where, he was able to shore these things up and not really see his production compromised at all. And if anything, he just got better and better and better and better and better as the year progressed. And you look at what he did in AAA, but even just as the year progressed in AA, the final 60 games of the season, This dude slashed 327, 408, 592. It's 1,000 on the dot OPS. I mean, doing that while improving defensively over that span, he walked at a 10% clip, struck out at a 15.7% clip, 14 home runs as well. He's, I think, an annual 2020 threat, could hit 30. If he's playing good third base, it's just a very fun and well-rounded profile. And he has flown through the minor leagues as well, by the way. It's been amazing to see. And the other side, too, is like he can play second base and a solid second base. So you have versatility a little bit as well if needed. They don't need that now, but it's just another asset to him as well. And by the way, in the Premier 12, 419, it was 9 games, but 419, 500, 742 slash line. That's 13 for 31.
Damn.
Crazy. Walked more than he struck out.
Yeah. He's as close to a flawless prospect as we've got in this organization. And I mean, when you're thinking about infield prospects in Major League Baseball, he's up there with most. And I'm thinking of, the gold standard, obviously, like a Carson Williams. But then after that, he might just fall in line with McGonigal and Christian Campbell and all these guys that we're talking about in that clump. I think tier 1, unless I'm missing somebody blatant, tier 1 is probably Carson Williams and Kobe Mayo.
Yep.
But he's there in tier 2.
I think he's got a case to be pushing, closer to that tier 1 with a lot of the things that he's done. And I think a strong spring training, you might start to see people update their lists and do that. Yeah. But that'll do it for this episode. We got Reds later this week, or tomorrow, I should say. I'm excited to keep going through these team top prospect lists. It's going to be very heavy in that regard going forward, like where a lot of these episodes, that's what we're going to be prioritizing. That's what we're going to be churning out. Right. And then the top 100 should be coming out. We haven't set an official date yet. I'm leaning towards like right at the start of March, I think. But maybe if things are flowing, we put it out a little bit sooner. But the priority is to get these team top prospect lists out, and then we can really have all the write-ups and do it the most confident audit of every system to make sure that we have the most confident top 100 that we can possibly have here. But I'm really excited to keep churning these out. And I don't have the exact schedule in front of me, but you can find that at justbaseball.com, prospects vertical, top prospects by team, and you'll have the date for every single farm system update or just farm system write-up that'll be coming out every week moving forward here, and a lot of weeks too. But we found a nice rhythm here.
Yep, no doubt.
Looking forward to talking to you all tomorrow.